Welcome to part 5 in my mini-series on how I deal with scraps. Today we're looking at white paper scraps. Come on in.
Hello everybody, this is Julia Laird with Senior Susie Stamps, and today is part 5 and the last of my mini-series on how I deal with scraps. And as you can see today, we're going to work on white paper scraps. This is all my white paper scraps, and I've got it sorted out into different sizes so I can decide what I'm going to do with them. And most of them, now not all of them, but most of them are my heavyweight cardstock. I really prefer not to save too much of the 65 pound cardstock because it just doesn't hold up for sentiments and things that I like to do with my white paper. I keep all my white paper scraps in this little container that I got from the Dollar Tree. And while I'm thinking about it, if y'all ever get any of these little desiccants, don't throw them away. Put them in with your paper supplies. I have them all over, and it helps to keep your paper moisture at a consistent level. So be sure and save those. So this stays on my desk over here, and when it gets full, then we come to today. So here we are, and I use this white paper all the time in card making, so I'm not going to want to empty it out. That's not the goal. Today's goal is to show you some possibly new ideas on how to use up some of this paper, and I have made some cards to show you. Now this card is not pure white, it's kind of an off-white, and I was reminded of this technique when I went through recently and put all of my flowers away when I got those paper flowers and put them in the cases. There's a video on that. But I was reminded about this technique, which is an old technique, and I want to show it to you today because it's perfect for using up some of your white scraps. Now there were 15 of these little flowers. This is an old Stampin' Up! Set called Flower Shop, and it has a punch that goes with it. Great set. If you don't have it, and you can find it on eBay or Etsy or wherever you buy used stamps, get it because it's a fabulous set. Now, so I layered these up with a piece of foam between them, and then I just used my little half-inch circle punch and punched out the centers and elevated them up and made this nice little sympathy card. I have 3 or 4 more over here that I made. This is the same technique, and I'm going to show it to you in just hang on a minute. But now these are just double layered flowers, but they have a layer of foam up underneath, so it's 2 foam plus 2 flowers. And here's another way to use white paper up. Isn't that a pretty card? I just thought that turned out so nicely. And it's all white paper scraps. So there's always something interesting you can do with a piece of white paper. And now this is the last one using that same technique. That's a pretty card, isn't it? A lot of dimension. These are all up on foam, and then there's a piece of foam between these 2 flower layers. So the card stacks up nicely. It looks gorgeous, and I was really pleased with the way it turned out. So the first thing I did was to sort them out kind of by size. These little pieces here are wonderful, of course, for making these little thin sentiment strips, and I will be making some of those. Probably not on camera because you all know all about that. But there's other ways to use these little thin strips, like what I did on those cards, because that's exactly what these were. It's just little thin strips that I used to soak up ink. Let's get to this technique because it's a lot of fun. And I think it'll give you an idea of some things that you could do with your stamps and your white paper scraps. Now, these are in shapes of labels, so I'm putting those directly into my labels bin over on my Gramercy cart. These have sentiments, and I'm putting them directly into my sentiment thing that looks just like this on my Gramercy cart. Give me just a second, I'll be right back. Now this is a baby wipe technique, and you all are probably familiar with it, and if you're not, if you're new to stamping, it's a fun process. And we used the ink refills. So today I'm going to use a couple of baby wipes, and I'm just going to take them and fold them in half, kind of more or less, and lay them down in the bottom of this tray, and that's what I'm going to add my ink to. And if you were adding ink refills, you just add it in drops until you get the saturation that you're looking for. But today I want to use some of these Ken Oliver Color Burst. These are a fabulous product, and they're so much fun. They have a lot of color. Now I will say this, you're probably going to get some on your fingers. I have been fighting ink on my fingers all week because I started this a few days ago, getting those little samples done. Now let's see, this one was fuchsia. This one is lemon yellow. And I'm just doing a little tap, not squeeze. If you squeeze, you get a whole big squirt out, and you probably don't want that. I'm going to use a little bit of blue. And then I'm just going to add a very little tiny touch of green. And what happens is the green and the red will mix, and it'll turn brown on you. And the blue and the yellow will mix and turn greenish. So you have to be aware of what's going on when with your color when you do this technique. Now I always like to add a little bit of water. It helps your color burst be more mobile. And now comes the fun part. I'm going to get some of these strips of white, and I think I'll get one of these stamps out of here. I think we'll use this one again because it's got a nice surface area. Now let me see. I think this is the way I need to cut, so I'm going to try to remember that. I didn't remember that the first time, and it was a bit of a challenge on the punch part. Oopsie. Let's see how pretty those are. And if you want more intense color, then add more color burst. But I just think these are fun the way they are. They add a really nice little accent flower. Every single solitary one of them is different than the last one. I like to double layer mine. So if I'm making a 5-flower card, I want 10 of these. And there is 5. And I'm not afraid of a little white showing. It doesn't bother me at all on these. I think it just adds to the interest of these flowers. So that was 6. This is 7. And you see, if you pull from different areas, you get totally different colors. And there's 9. We need one more. And there's number 10. Now I'm going to take some of these small strips and just lay them down in there and pick up some color. You don't have to saturate them, and they'll dry quicker if you don't. And here's where you do get ink on your fingers, but I think it makes a really nice little background. Now this is a thinner piece of paper. I'm going to throw that out because I really want the heavier weight paper for this. The lighter weight paper gets too saturated. I hope you'll try this technique. If you use your ink refills, it works just as well. And it may work even better. I just thought these colors were really pretty, and I wanted to try them today. And if you want to saturate your paper down and get a little more ink in it, you can do that. Let's do a couple more. That's lightweight paper. And you'll see a little texture from the baby wipe on that. I think that'll be enough. Let me do just a couple more here. Let's do some of these thin ones. You can cut them after they dry, but they do have to dry before you cut. Okay, now let me wipe my hands off, because as I said, you do get ink. If that bothers you, you can use a little rubber glove. It doesn't bother me too much. I've been getting ink on my hands for years, and it's just part of the beast, I think. So now, this, if you do it in a case like this, or any kind of Tupperware or whatever you've got, you can close it up and it'll stay damp, and you can go back and do another batch of them sometime later if you want to. Looks like I may have a little color spattered out. That's one of the drawbacks of working too close to that color burst, because it does burst. I can tell you that. Okay, so now I want to punch these, and I'm going to punch them all out, and I'll be right back. Okay, now these need to dry just a little bit more, but I have these all punched. So what I'm going to do now is go through and sort the ones that I'm sure I want to use for the top layers and get those pulled out. And so these will be the bottom layers. And what I'm going to do is, while those are drying, I'm just going to go ahead and tape these up. Like I said, it doesn't take but just a minute to fix these flowers, and then they're really good going however you want to do them. And all I'm going to do is to set these other flowers in on top. And I'm going to twist them a little bit so that the little flower looks a little fuller. And you can take these and manipulate them, curve them up if you want to. I am not going to worry about that, because I think there's a lot of interest in these cards, and I don't think having your flowers curled up is necessary on these. However, I do that with flowers frequently. There. Now, aren't those pretty? I just think these are really pretty with all those different colors on them. Okay, let's let that dry for a minute. And I want to corrugate some of these, because this is my last piece of corrugated. This is a corrugator, and it's from Fiskars. It is not still available. If you ever find one and you have the opportunity to get it, I encourage you to do so, because they are really wonderful. And they do help use up pieces of paper in an interesting way, because you can do this with all different kinds of paper. And I don't know if you noticed it on this card here, but that's what that is, a piece of corrugated that I just ran through the corrugator. So I'm going to do just a few of these. From my stash. So that's done. I put my corrugator back away. Now the other thing that I want to do is to fix the sentiment for this card that we're working on, and I'm using a set called Nurturing Blooms from Gina K, and it's going to be sending you lots of love. And I'm going to use my VersaFine onyx black for that because I want it to really stand out against the flowers. And on this card, I'm going to make a circle punch around my sentiment. That looks good. Get my ink out of here. And I'm using a 2.5 inch circle punch. It's an EK punch. And I'm going to leave it kind of right in the middle of that because I can manipulate the flowers around it that way. There we go. Now let's see. These are not quite dry. So let's just rest for a minute with these. I'm going to cut this into some quarters. There's only one. Yeah, I'm going to cut this one in half. Let me go do that while those are finishing up drying. And this is a 3/4 inch piece, so that will give me 1/4 plus 1/2 then, which falls in nicely with all the rest of these that are here. So now what I want to do is to get one of my 65-pound card front pieces here, because I'm going to glue up onto that and then put it on the top of the card. But I want to go ahead and trim this down 1/4 inch before I put foam on those and glue it up. So I'm going to cut it to 4 by 5 1/4. And this is the lighter weight cardstock. This is my 65-pound. And I typically do not save these lightweight ones because they're not as handy, and I have plenty of the heavyweight cardstock. Now the next thing I want to do is to get foam layers put on all of these. I'll cut some thin ones for those thin strips over there. The dimension that this adds to the card, it's really remarkable. And it makes it very impressive to look at. It may not photograph as well on the video camera, but I'll guarantee you in person these are really nice. This is not my original thought, and I was trying to remember if it was Natasha Foote or Laura Beard perhaps that I saw this technique. Don't quote me on that because I just, for the life of me, I just can't remember where I saw it first. I just don't know, but it's very useful for using up little strips of paper like this. Something other than just the sentiment that, you know, we all have to have anyway. Now I suppose you could cut your papers a little shorter before you put your foam tape on them and maybe save a little foam tape that way. I wasn't too worried about it. There, now I'm going to go ahead and start putting this down in a diagonal. There. I'm going to leave some white between them. And see how interesting that little bit of white space adds to the texture on these. Now I'm going to do another thin strip on both sides. Gosh, look at the color in this one. Okay, let me get the scraps out of the road here. And then we'll do the trim off the back. Oh, isn't that pretty? Okay, let's see. I'm just going to do a little prevention here. I think I'll peel this back. Well, it's stuck pretty good. How about this one? It's stuck good too, so all right then. Now, just to be sure, let's push them down well. There we go. Okay, now this gets glued onto a base, and I am going to put my ATG tape runner as well as some glue on this because it's supporting an awfully lot, and I'm going to put it on a top fold card because I think this is one of those kind of cards that somebody's going to want to set and display. And I think top fold cards make that process easier. Say, hold the presses, Julia, put your glue on. Well, it went down all right, so we're good, maybe, hopefully. Do that little trim off. Now this one, I am going to glue down because it's only going to adhere to those little strips there. And I'm going to use my tweezers to help me place it. I kind of want to get it in the middle, but I want to have the Sending You Lots of Love be horizontal the way it should be. Now, we get to think about what we're going to do with our flowers. Yeah, and this one needs to be the starting point because it doesn't have as much room over here, and I don't want to trim off any flowers. So there we go. My cat Cordelia is playing with something on the floor. It makes me kind of curious as to what she found. It's hard telling. Let me know in the comments if you have ever used this baby wipe technique. It's been a long time since I remembered about it. I want to get this one up there so that I don't have to trim. Now on these leaves, they came from I Am Roses, and I'll get you the number in just half a second here, because I really like them. They're so handy to be able to just pull out. Let's see. Here they are. They're the small green rose leaves, and it's ZQLOS, and they come 100 to the pack. And I'm going to flat guarantee you better get plenty because you'll use them all the time, is what I have found. And I'm going to put 3 leaves on this card, 2 and 1. And I like to use my little Tim Holtz scissors to trim that little wire off, because I don't want it stuck down in there. And these 2 are challenged to come apart. So let's get the stems. There we go. I'm just going to cut that right close. Now some people will take these little wires and twist them up and make a little vine-like ending. I just hesitate about doing that because I'm always afraid that the postal carrier will stick themselves. And I would hate for that to happen. Now I'm going to place my leaves and then go back and glue them. I find on these cards with all this texture that really helps to do it that way. And I'm pointing the ends in towards the middle, so I'm pointing them, trying to get them pointed right to the O of. And then I'm going to slip them up underneath the flowers so that the flowers show. All right, and then I'm going to come back around on the back side and put a drop of glue just to hold the leaf in place. And I put my finger down here and peel my leaf back and put a drop of glue and then push it down. These are paper leaves, so it's going to be paper to paper, and you know how this art glitter glue is. It won't turn loose once it dries, so it should be good. But it does give you just half a second to manipulate them if you need to. I'm going to put me a little drop right there. There. And there's another way to use white paper scraps. How fun is that? All right, let's see what else I got. I showed you the corrugated. Oh, I was going to do some, see if I've got some pieces. This is lightweight, I'm getting rid of it. And that one. I was going to see if I had some pieces that were big enough to cut into some labels, because I need some labels. And I'm going to use my little star punch because I'm working on July 4th cards, and I need some more of these stars, so I'm going to do several of these. That's one more way that I'm going to use up some of these scraps. Now let me go get some punches, because that's next. Now I have a lot of the older Stampin' Up! Punches that are label maker punches, and so that's what I'll use. And then I have a box over on my Gramercy cart that is labeled labels, and that's where they're going to go and live, so that when I need one I can just reach over there and grab it. So the best way that I know to do this is to start with the largest one, which would be this one, and then work your way down. So that's what I'm working on next. And when I get finished with this, I'll come back and show you what I have left of the pile. Because now remember, I don't want to get rid of my entire pile because I use them all the time. And that's probably why my little white paper pile is not that big. It's not as big as some folks have theirs. Let's see if this one won't come out of here. So I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, so this is all the white scraps I have left. I have a couple of larger pieces here that I didn't want to cut quite yet. So that's it. That's all I've got left in my white scrap drawer. Pretty fun day. I've got most of them used up. I've also got some little white corrugated pieces to come over here. They live here too. And so this is going back on my desk. Now I've got some stars punched, I've got some labels done, and I have some fun cards to send. So, I hope you've enjoyed that. I think I'm going to go back and put some yellow gems on that one. Hang on a minute. I thought about going with pink, but I really think yellow is the way to go. And I think we're going to use the big ones because I have 5 of them. And that almost uses up these. Woohoo! I've been wanting to use these up because the adhesive on them has gotten old. And some of them it doesn't stick, like these two are not stuck. So I'm glad to get them used. I think sometimes when we have things in our craft stash, they get old. The adhesive gets old. It's like washi tape. You know, you can't keep washi tape forever. That's another thing you can do with your washi tape. Your white paper scraps, and that is to make some washi tape borders out of them. I forgot all about that part. So here we are, end of the day. And end of the mini-series, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments if you did, and if you liked this baby wipe technique. I think it's a lot of fun, and the fact that you never know what you're going to get out of it is kind of a bonus to me. So, it's Julia, and I hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.